Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Operation Redwood podcast. Today we are starting our series, our long-awaited series on King David, and not just the King David that we know from Bible school, or not Bible
David
school.
and Goliath?
What's Sunday school? Sunday school. That slayed the giant, but specifically the warrior, the friend, the lover, and the king side of David, which is all very, very interesting because there's so much more than him slaying a giant.
Yeah, the story goes on.
The story way goes on.
It has ups, it has downs, it has them further down.
Way, yeah.
And then,
Very, very many downs. It gets very deep. Yes. And as always, I'm here with my co-hosts, Alfredo and Bryant. And if you guys... And Brian was waiting. He's like, come on, man, do the intro for me real quick. Yeah. And as you guys can tell, we are moving on up in the podcasting audio world because our audio is sultry.
Très magnifique. Sultry.
People are like, these guys, this is why they can't have nice
This is a Christian podcast? What?
That's perfect. So let's get right into it. King David as the warrior, and today specifically we're going to look at the dichotomy of a warrior and a lover. The definition of a lover is a little bit different than what most people expect it to be, but we'll touch on that a little bit. But before we really get started, I want to give these guys an opportunity to share what's on their heart and what they're excited about to share and also take away from this study of the warrior and the lover for King David.
Man, it's super deep, right? Just because the things that I've read over these past few days, really, even just talking about David, really we end up having to look at the story of Saul as well for the introduction to David, because, without Saul being in the position that he was, falling away from God while he was in the position as king over Israel, even though there wasn't ever supposed to be a king of Israel, we actually see the development of where David comes in and why David ends up being so important to what is now Israel. So Saul, key figure in this story as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm really excited to dive in about these four faces of David as a shepherd boy, his transition, the character development that really just glorifies God and is a good example, As we know, Jesus is the best example, but David is a man after God's own heart, and that's in Scripture, and we're gonna try and shed some light on why that is.
And just the fact that I think that David is so relatable, even for the everyday man.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really interested
in. Whatever season you find yourself in.
Yes.
Because David had highs, David had lows.
He was in all four seasons multiple times.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Multiple times.
He was mad, he was sad. He got horny. And then it's real life. These are real people, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize about the Bible is there's some things in the Bible that will shock you. It's like, what? He did what? She did what? And it's like, well, that's because it's real life. Like, these stories are not new. The same things that happened back then continue to happen.
It's really not all sunshine and rainbows like people think it is.
No.
It's like the Bible. Oh, it's like, it's only positive. It's only this. I'm like, you have not read the Bible, my friend.
Not at all.
Because that's how I was when I started reading it.
Yeah.
I literally hit this dude up a couple times, and I hit you up too. I'm like, wait, they did this in the Bible?
That is dark.
What? What?
God said what?
He said, what? Jesus slay all of them?
Yeah, exactly.
Not me one? Like, whoa, bro. That's crazy.
No women, children, or men left.
No animals? Yeah. What the animals do?
Exactly.
even the cute little bunnies?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
It's crazy, man. Like, the more you read it, and then like the more you internalize, not just read it for the sake of reading, like most people do, right? But when you read it for the sake of like, what can I get from this? What can I learn from this? It comes to life, and then you start to see the relations of like outside world. Like, you see the patterns.
Yes.
And you're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And your belief your faith becomes strengthened because you see the patterns, and you see they're just stacking up the evidence of the Bible is real.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And here's a really interesting part that as we were doing this David study, David is the second most mentioned character in the Bible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Second most,
I believe it. He was a huge key in historic for Israel.
Yeah.
Because of the prophecies, because of, I mean, he was the greatest king of Israel.
Absolutely.
That's where the lineage of that God promised to David started. So
Absolutely.
So I think it's a really cool spot to start off this conversation with. Where let's tiptoe into it, and we'll meet you guys in the deep end. Let's start off where the common story of David is known, David and Goliath.
Okay.
Right? Where Goliath is a Philistine. Right? I almost said Philippines. I was like, pretty sure.
Wait, no, that's me.
He was Filipino?
Yeah.
What?
He likes ube, bro?
He likes where Goliath was this giant, and the Philistines were invading Israel. From my understanding, you guys correct me, interrupt me, whatever. And he makes this challenge of, okay, I'll fight any one of you, and if you guys win, you guys take us over. You guys basically take control of the Philistine army, and all the Israelite, quote unquote, the good guys, right? In the story of God's people, right? They were afraid.
Yeah.
No man stepped up to fight this giant because what they say was like 10 feet tall, 9 feet tall.
He was ridiculous.
It said 6 cubits or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure
I
what
was
a cubit is,
well,
but
cubit,
it's tall.
That sounds a lot. What's 1 cubit?
Yeah.
But they said I remember one of the studies that I saw was like his armor alone was about 125 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, that's how much Brian curls. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So he's this real giant. And a lot of the Israelite, the soldiers were afraid. No one stepped up to fight him. He's literally mocking them, saying all this stuff. And then this little shepherd boy, David, steps up.
Shepherd.
He's a shepherd. That means he takes care of sheep.
I'm having a lot of fun with this new microphone. I have no idea how this is going to sound, but it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. So let me cut you off for just a hot second.
Do it.
Before we get to David and Goliath, right? We got to start it with Samuel.
Yeah.
Can we start with Samuel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And who was Samuel for?
So
Me
Samuel
and everybody else.
was a prophet of God. Okay, so he was basically the person that would speak for God, right? So he was the
voice.
Yeah, the voice of God. There's a specific
I like how you
word.
said it with that too. The voice.
Yeah. But anyway, he's the voice of God, right? He's God's representative. So whenever he spoke, people really respected it because it would come true, you know? And so God tells Samuel, I'm done with Saul because of his disobedience, right? And so, Saul mourns him and, no, Lord, give him a chance and this and that. And God says, I've said, I am done with him. And that's the last I'll hear about this. He said it. And
So Samuel was advocating for Saul.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he was.
Got
He
it.
was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that was one of, like a man of God, that was their job, is to be like, to intermediate, to be like a lawyer, And scripture says that the prayer of a pious person, like, works. It really reaches God. God hears those prayers, Not to say he doesn't hear everybody's prayers, but he really puts emphasis on those. Anyways, so back to Samuel, right? The prophet. So he says, okay, God, whatever you say, you're the boss, right? And he says, go to the house of Jesse, and there I will show you who the next king is. Jesse is the father of David. David had, was it 5 other brothers or 6?
It's like
I think
7.
7, just kidding. So he had 7 other brothers, right? So Samuel goes to Jesse. Jesse, bring forth your sons, right? For I will anoint the next king of Israel. What? That's crazy. You come to my house and tell me one of my kids is going to be king? Okay, I'm
Exactly.
down, right? I'm about it. Well, he brings those 7 out, okay? And he goes, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it.
He's ugly.
God says that's not it. Yeah, he's ugly. God said, oh, well, you know, this guy's tall and he's handsome. Surely he's the one, right?
Exactly.
Because we have a certain way of thinking, right? And the
I
way that
like
man
that.
thinks is not the same way that God thinks.
Exactly.
And what we call righteousness is dirty and filthy for God, you know, because he is absolute, and all powerful and holy, and he knows everything. He is the wise judge, the fair judge. So moving on. So finally he's like, you know, Saul's like, you know, God, you sent me here so I could anoint a king. These are all the sons. Jesse, do you have another son? Because I'm looking kind of bad right now, you know?
Yeah, he's
And
out in the field.
Yeah,
Like, they
and
don't
then
really
he's,
want him.
yeah, he's like, he's not even of age or something. I
Yeah.
forgot exactly what he said, but he's like, he's out tending to the sheep right
Yeah.
now, you know? And so, like, to me in my head, I was like, why are you looking down on David? You know,
Exactly.
like, I believe he was the youngest, if I'm not
He
mistaken.
was.
And,
Absolutely.
but still, why look down on the youngest, you
Yeah.
know? And scripture says, don't let anybody look down on you because of your age, you know, like be on fire for God and be brave, be courageous for God, for Jesus. And so, so then sure enough, he comes down from tending to the lambs, and then God tells him, this is the one. He anoints him with the oil, right? And then nothing happens.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. And so now I don't remember how many years. I want to say 10 years.
Years?
Passed. 10
Yeah.
years
From when
passed.
he was anointed by
Yeah.
Samuel
Exactly.
Yeah.
to...
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to say 10 years went by.
See, this is why you guys got to read the Bible, y'all. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
So God called you 10 years ago, and then he just kind of let that simmer for 10 years.
Exactly.
So here he is sitting there. It's like, what happens now? I
Yeah.
have been anointed. Like, why am I not living in the king's palace?
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
Exactly.
Crazy.
And it just goes to show you that God has a calling for you, and God has a purpose for you, and God has given you gifts, right? But until you have the character developed enough to act on those gifts and act on that calling, God's not going to put you there because you're not ready. You can't handle it, right? So imagine this, I don't know, 5-year, 6-year-old, whatever, how old he was. And okay, you're king, I'm going to throw you on the throne. What kind of wise decisions is this king going to make? You know,
Exactly.
and we've seen in history all the terrible things that children
Yep.
rulers do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, anyways, so then now we see ourselves in this picture that you were painting. The father says, your brothers are out on the battlefield. Go bring them food and drink.
Yeah.
So this is when he gets out there. And then that's what you're painting, you know. Out of nowhere, he's bringing this food to his brothers, and he hears this giant out there, right? Which he didn't even think of. He didn't see his height. He didn't see his weight. He didn't see his armor. He didn't see any sort of intimidation. What he saw was a problem. And a problem that was weaker than his God, right? A problem that his God could fix. So he's over here, you know, he gets in, I don't want to say enraged, but he gets emboldened, he gets mad, and he starts to basically preach to the rest of the troops. And who is this uncircumcised Philistine that dares to challenge the armies of the living God of Israel? Ooh, I'm getting chills.
And he's like, how you know I'm not circumcised?
Hey,
Yeah.
but then right after that, I loved what ended up happening next, because I think that it's just a testament to what the everyday man goes through now. One of his oldest brothers had said, you know, why are you here? You know, what are you doing down on
There
the
you
front
go.
lines?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So essentially going against what God told David to go about doing. You know, and I think that we as individuals out in the modern day world, we encounter that on a regular basis, where you might want to do something, and just because somebody tells you, like, no, that I don't think that can happen for you, and, you know, it might just be because of your background. Maybe you're Filipino and, you know, 5'6", and you're not going to be able to, you know, jump over this wall in police academy, whatever. whatever.
Play basketball.
Talk about me. Talk about me, y'all.
Yeah, not personal.
That was me. I was like, oh, was it?
That person is not in this room.
It
But
felt
it's
like
not
a
a dig.
We can talk about my circumcision next.
Yeah, but you just imagine what David was experiencing at that time. He was going through and giving this rousing speech to the troops, and then to have somebody that is supposed to be loving on him, and his older brother tell him, "Why are you here? You are not supposed to be here. Go back and tend to the sheep. Go tend to our father." I think that's one of the things that we absolutely need to touch on as well, because that's kind of like that thing that stifles that warrior spirit, just to go out and pursue. Right? When you have somebody that you trust, their judgment and such tell you, like, hey, maybe this isn't meant to happen right now, even though you feel like it is. That might be one of the very things that makes you stop whatever it is that you were pursuing. And then, 10 years later or whatever, who knows what you went through in that 10-year period. But then you say, man, I really wish that I would have pursued that. But as a result of, my brother, my mom, my dad, whoever, saying, no, I don't think that right now is a good time for you, you kind of just stop. Why is that?
Yeah, I've heard that, certain plants and creatures, they grow into their environment,
Yeah.
And so when their environment is restricting, they can only grow so big, you know. So if they don't have the encouragement, the fertilizer, the space to breathe and stretch, that's definitely could be attributed to it.
Yeah.
There's one of the pastors I really liken to, and I've mentioned him multiple times on our show, Pastor Keith Craft out of Texas. He says, your alignments will determine your assignments.
Yeah, that's right.
Hallelujah.
See.
Yeah.
We need a button
Absolutely.
for that.
Yeah, I know. Your alignments determine your assignments. Who are you aligned to?
Yeah.
It goes back to, this is just a side note from David, why I align myself with people like you guys. Warriors, lovers, kings, and friends all require a different side of you to come out and perform, deliver, and serve. You can't, your wife is expecting you to be a lover and a friend, and you can't come in there warrior. It's
Sometimes.
so.
Get on the bed, girl. I'm not asking.
He's like,
I'm telling you.
Frag out, girl. Frag out. But that's the whole thing. It's like, when you are aligned with certain people, they can draw, and they can actually, when you're aligned with certain people, they can align you with the assignment that God's put you to. And going back to what you were saying earlier, and I sent you guys this text message a couple days ago. Remember that?
Yeah.
I woke up early in the morning and I just had this message in my heart, and I just started typing and I sent it to you guys. And when what you said, he's like, or what you were saying, our character will help determine our calling. Right? If we're called to do something great, but our character isn't ready, sometimes God will take 5, 10 years for us to develop into that.
That's right. Because you have to have the experiences in order to overcome challenges easier.
Yeah.
Right. Not easily, but easier. If you fell down and you scraped your knee, right, when you're 5, you cried a storm, you don't know when the pain's going to stop. You don't even know that. You could just get up and walk it off, right? You fall down now, you scrape your knee, you're like, and then you walk it off and you just move on, And other things in life, sometimes we're confronted with situations, my boyfriend left me, or, my boss said this or whatever, and, we've experienced it for the first time, so it's fresh, and we're like, what am I going to do? I don't know how to overcome this. I don't know how to beat this. What can I do to fix the problem? And once you do it once, then the next time that situation confronts you or somebody you can act accordingly. You can give them the right advice, Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, man. So
sorry. So back to what you were saying about why is it that when people get confronted by negativity or whatnot, they stop.
Doubt.
Right? Doubt, right?
Exactly.
And that's another amazing trait that we see in David is that he's courageous, but not in himself. He's courageous, and he has, he's solid. He's solidified in in confidence, not in himself, but in He who was greater. Right? He who was greater than himself, than the problem, than the giant, than the persecution. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Then his brother telling him, "You shouldn't be here," and David's like, just lets it roll off. He's like, "All right, whatever,"
Yeah.
you know, because I know I'm going to be king one day.
Exactly.
You know, so I trust God.
And that's why
trust
God
is in
didn't choose you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I actually wrote this down on my notes the other day. What's today? 4th? I wrote this yesterday. David didn't become strong because he fought Goliath. He was already made strong while God developed him while he was tending sheep.
absolutely.
That's why David had the confidence to face Goliath when nobody else would. He didn't fear Goliath. David only feared God.
There you go. He who was greater, baby.
Yeah. So that was one of the points that I really wanted to touch on, man, because, you know, when you're reading the Bible and it's talking about how the Israelites were retreating from these Philistines every time that they would see the giant, that giant being whatever in your modern day life. You know, we encounter these things and we might want to run away, but then having that spirit of David where, you know, being probably the youngest person on that battlefield, he ran up to the front lines where his brothers were, asked them, "How are you?" Seeing that the Philistines were coming toward them, this little kid was without fear. You know, the youngest person on the battlefield was without fear, ran up to his brothers, "How are you?" And then encountered, you know, "Why are you here?
Yeah.
Get out of here." Yeah. I'm not sure if that was coming from a loving place or, you know, well, actually it said that his brother was angry when he made that statement to him. So you think about that. On your way to God's assignment, you end up encountering those kinds of, you know, instances where everything is not going like planned.
You might encounter people that want to stop you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we read the Bible, it happens twice, right? So from the brother and then from King Saul,
Right.
right? Where King Saul is like, "Hey, you are but a youth. You can't go against this giant."
Yeah.
But then what David does, I found incredible. You know, he qualifies himself. It's like, you know, throughout all this time, I have been tending sheep. I fought lions with my bare hands, bears. So I'm ready.
Yeah.
This was what I was called for. And if you truly think about it, when God goes about telling people, "Hey, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb." So he knows what we were called for. And we might not see it. Other people might not see it. But God knows exactly what was put in our hearts. So then as a result, we're able to go, you know, to the front lines, talk to our brothers, sisters, whomever. "How are you?" With no fear, even though everybody else is shaking in their boots.
Yeah. So far we have two amazing qualities,
Yeah.
right, in David. One is courage, and the other one is faith,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, right? But we can translate that to confidence, right? So confidence, but not in himself. He has confidence in a greater power, in someone that is stronger than him and stronger than his problem. So two great qualities so far. And another one that you briefly touched on was that when he said that he was a shepherd, right? And that he fought off the lion and the bear barehanded. To me, you try to, I don't care how big you are, how strong you are, you fight off a bear or a lion barehanded, I think you're going to die. You know, I think you're going to go. I think that's your call. That's it.
Say hi to Jesus for me.
Yeah. But anyway, so for him to say, "I fought it barehanded," right? That just goes to show you his level of determination, of tenacity, and also of good stewardship, right? Because that's really what shepherds are. They're stewards of these creatures who can't fend for themselves.
Yeah.
They can't find food for themselves. They can't see well. They can't hear well. They don't have fangs. They don't have claws. They can't defend themselves. So they need a defender.
Dude, I'm so glad that you brought that up because essentially those animals were the Israelites in that moment,
There you go.
right? Because at the time that the Philistines were pursuing them, they were shaking in their boots, retreating to, you know, whatever was the closest area that they felt safe. And then you have this one individual run up, like, "Who is this kid? qualifies himself to the king, and even the king's okay, who am I to go about denying you this battle? If you want to die, then you go ahead and die. So he passes the kid his armor, his sword, all these things, and David is like, I can't use these. I'm not used to being in these things, so I can't fight like this. So he gives the king back his sword, his armor. Said, I'll just take my rod and then these, 5 stones. And he runs out there to the Philistine. The Philistine comes out and he mocks him. He starts mocking God. Essentially said, I will spit on you and, all the gods that you come, with. And David, standing in front of this giant, who knows how tall he is, 6 cubits. Essentially says, who are you to mock the God, that is before me? And kills this dude. Hacks his head off and then brings it back to the Israelites.
And he tells him that before he does it.
Yeah.
He's like, God has given you, has turned you into my hand, has delivered you into my hand. And
Exactly.
I will cut your head off.
Exactly.
And I will feed your body to the birds.
Exactly.
Like that to say something like that.
Yeah.
And it's not a threat.
It is.
It's a promise.
It's a promise.
What?
If you ever got into like a street fight with someone like making proclamations like that, you're like,
I'm
all
going
right,
to
man.
poke your eyes out.
I'm gonna poke your eyes out. I'm gonna cut your head off. I'm gonna go back inside the club, man. It's cool.
It's not that serious for me.
It's not that serious, bro. It's cool, man. Whatever.
Telling you.
But it takes a certain level of confidence and certainty to say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Think about that pressure, right? Because if David were to lose, the war would have been over and the Philistines would have taken over the Israelite army. Like the pressure of that.
Oh, yeah.
Dude didn't break.
Exactly.
At a young age. And he didn't just break. He performed and he made a promise. Like, I remember Conor McGregor, one of the reasons he shot to fame so quick was because he did a very similar tactic. He said, "I will tap you out in the second round. I'm gonna knock you out with a head kick in the first round." And he was calling it. He was like, it was this Mystic Mac, right? And then he was doing it. He was putting dudes to sleep as he said it would be.
Nice.
Which was crazy. And that just built up so much hype around him. And not even just that, but the confidence that it put into him. He was a booming star. And he got a title shot super early.
Yeah.
Dude was calling his fights, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's just like a mystic feel to someone that has that type of level of certainty and confidence.
Absolutely.
And that's what I imagine David going into this battlefield like, I'm going to cut your head off. Like,
Yeah.
what? Do you guys
Exactly.
see how big this dude is? And
Yeah.
you didn't even bring the armor? So the tools that God calls us and gives us may not be the same tools that we are used to.
Absolutely.
Man. And then, another consideration was the fact that David didn't even go down there truly to fight Goliath.
True.
He was like, I'm just here to DoorDash.
Exactly.
I'm just here to give you your food, tip me. I'll be on my way.
Yeah, exactly.
Just wait till I get my tip. I'm gonna come back for you.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin my 5-star reviews.
But he didn't run, just like he didn't run from the bear and from the lion.
Exactly.
If I was a shepherd, unless I have a gun, all right, guys, it was a good run.
Good luck.
I'm not going out there barehanded.
Exactly. But I think the thing that got to me was the fact that it said that all of the Israelites took off. So, this was one of the qualifying marks for David as an individual, right? Because you think about all of them. So the older brothers, the ones that Samuel came and said, hey, this is not the one. To 7 of them. And you have the youngest one that stayed. Did not show any signs of fear, or maybe he did run back, but he was like, why are you guys running? And then when he turned around and he heard the Philistine talking bad about God, he's like, oh, you guys are running from this? No, let's stand up and fight this one. So it's amazing to me that God will utilize even the youngest one, the person that's supposed to be the most meek, right? To go about delivering this message. Because imagine the message that was, translated through that battle to the Israelites post this young kid killing this giant with a stone, hacking off the head and then bringing it back to the Israelites.
Yeah.
The Philistines take off, and I'm imagining that David is covered in sweat, drenched with blood, running back and just extremely elated because he was doing what God told him to do in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 points that I just thought of whenever you were saying that. One is keep your eye on the prize, right?
Very good.
That's something that that you need to do as, especially, I mean, anyone really, but as a man, right? You have to keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on what the mission is, right? And for you, you know what that is. For me, I know what that is. For David in the moment was, I need to trust God, right? And that takes like you said, a special type of character, because it's really hard to look at a problem and not see the problem, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like for David, if it was me up against Goliath, right? Like I'm like, this dude's huge. This dude is a seasoned fighter, like this is his profession. He's a warrior. Like he's there to kill people, period. End of story. I tend to sheep. Yeah, I might have killed a bear, with my bare hands. That's cool, but it's no Goliath. You know what I mean? And so maybe that's my lack of faith, but for David, he didn't see a man. He saw a dead man. He just saw the problem already resolved
Exactly.
in God. Like he was like, God's given me some skills. Let's see what happens. I trust in his abilities.
Exactly.
And so the second point is we don't change the rules at game time, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, because like you touched on earlier, Saul gave David his sword, gave him his armor, and he's like, I can't walk in this. I don't know how to maneuver this. This is not how I've defended my flock in the past. This is not how I'm going to start doing it now. I'm going to do it the way that God brought me up to do it, right? And so he sheds the armor, he sheds his sword, he walks out there, collects the pebbles, and the rest is history, right?
Absolutely.
Don't change the rules at game time.
Man,
Have some morals.
really just sticking to the basics, man.
Yeah.
I like that you touched on that.
Yeah, that's so good.
Absolutely.
That's such a good theme too.
Yeah.
We've each talked about this on on a different level where it's like, what's your 80-20? Right? If you guys are familiar with the 80-20 Pareto's principle, 80% of the results come from 20% of the work. So essentially, you do one or two really good things, and you're getting a majority of the results from those one or two, maybe three things. And it's so important for us to step into that. What's your 80-20? What's your 20%? What's the gifts that you've been honing your whole life that you're not utilizing?
Yeah.
If we take a moment to step back, like David's been shepherding. He's been using, the pebbles and slingshot.
He's been running,
trained.
He's been moving,
he's
been fighting.
He has been, maybe not in the same exact context as a soldier or a warrior, but he's been doing everything that's led up to that.
Yeah. He knew how to like duck and dodge, from the
Dip,
pause.
dodge, duck.
Yep. He knew how to do everything.
Dodgeball, son.
Yeah.
Man.
But that's a great self-awareness check where like, what's my 80-20? What has God been training me for my whole life that maybe I just wasn't paying attention?
Man.
I ask myself this all the time.
Yeah.
Like, God, why did you, give me success at the police department? Why did you give me this taste of the SWAT team and just to take it away? It just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Especially at the time. Like, I remember sitting in the hospital bed after, I don't know, oh man, this is going to be crazy. A little bit of a tangent, but this memory just came back to me. So, when I was training for the qualification test for the SWAT team, my training was on point. Like I was doing great. I knew what time I was gonna wake up, what I was gonna eat, what time I was gonna eat. Like everything was dialed to the day that the SWAT test was on.
To the minutes.
To the minute, bro. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna crush this test. I'm about to get on the team. And the morning came of the SWAT test, and I had my bags already ready at the door. I pick up my bags, and I'm getting ready to leave. Carlene was actually in Chicago at the time, so she was on vacation. It was just me at the house, so I had complete focus. I had my bags. I'm opening up the door, and for some reason, I had like this hesitation in my heart, like something like just didn't feel right. And I'm like, okay, hold on. shut the door, put the bags down. I get on my knees and I say a quick prayer. And mind you, I haven't been to church in a long time at this point. I haven't prayed in forever. And I remember praying like this quote unquote sincere, God, you know how hard I work for this.
If you do this for me.
Yeah, if you do this for me. I
I don't need half the proceeds.
yeah, exactly. Proceeds. I'll save it, kid. I swear. And I just get on my knees and I pray. It's literally, dude. I'll call it what it is. It was an insurance prayer. Insurance. That was it. And I remember the last line of my prayer was, God, whatever happens, your will be done. I'll accept it. But wink, wink. I'm like, I'm about to crush this shit.
I better do good.
But I do really good. You know how hard I work. You know how much I sacrifice.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I went out here to do your work.
Exactly.
I left Chicago. So go ahead. So we fast forward. I'm doing the test. I end up blowing my knee as Bryant was saying earlier, jumping over a wall, bust my knee. They put me in an ambulance, and they rushed me to the hospital. Finally, get me into the emergency room. Got me in my own room, and I'm on the bed now. And I remember the pain meds wearing off, and I could start to feel my knee again. And I was like, "Oh, this freaking hurts!" And I'm literally ringing my buzzer. And this is the hospital that we bring bad guys to. So
Hope nobody recognizes you.
Exactly. Hope nobody recognizes me. But I'm like, dude, come
help me.
come help me. I was like, we need. I'm sorry. I'm like, I need some more pain meds.
Right.
But nobody was coming to me. No one was attending to me.
Right.
Nurses were walking by and nothing was happening. And I remember just being in this state of pain and then all of a sudden looking up, like literally looking up in my hospital bed, like, God, what the F?
Yeah.
Literally the line that came out of my mouth, like, God, what the F? You know how hard I worked for this. You know how much I sacrificed. And I imagine every scenario but me ending up in a hospital.
How could you do this to me?
How could you do this to me?
Over a knee?
Over a knee, right. I'm like, dude, we've chased bad guys. We've gotten to all these crazy fights. And you take me out during a test?
Yeah.
Did you know how hard I worked for? And I was so pissed at God. And I remember just kind of cursing at God. And then I remember the line I said for that prayer.
Yep.
God, whatever happens, your will be done. I'll accept it. And just like a little kid that got scolded, I remember like looking up and I'm like,
you win.
literally like a sigh of like, damn, you're right. I did say that.
Yeah.
I did say that.
Hey, you never know, man. If you would have joined maybe that SWAT team, maybe you would have died somewhere, before your time or something.
It could have been. It could have been.
Every
But I look at all
reason.
of that in retrospect now, and to look at what we're able to do now,
Yeah. And where you're at today.
and what we're able to do with this podcast and this platform, the topics we're able to speak on now. Don't get me wrong. I still miss that warrior identity side, but I feel so engaged with what we're doing today. With this podcast and this movement and trying to win men's hearts again, especially in the social climate we're in today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this was the battle I was made for.
I think that you're taking away from yourself, though, man, because not only in that situation do you display the prowess of a warrior. You know what I mean? There's different areas in life where you can go about displaying that, whether that be being the protector for your family. You know what I mean? That's definitely one of the many hats that we end up wearing.
Yes.
As the warrior. So it's not just going out there and fighting these battles. The battles, especially in the United States, are pretty much imaginary, unless you're out there, fighting in the streets and such as a police officer or just a hoodlum. But those battles are imaginary for us up until you actually go over into a combat zone. So we're taking away from ourselves when we say that that's the only facets that we can really truly display being a warrior. You know what I mean?
Sometimes you could be a warrior doing your job.
Yeah.
Sticking up for yourself, doing the right thing, sticking up
Absolutely.
for the little guy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because selling a car, what I mean, you gotta be sometimes brave, sometimes you gotta be courageous, sometimes you gotta,
Exactly.
you gotta take care of business.
I mean, I look back to single moms raising kids.
Exactly.
They
Warriors,
were
man.
the warriors, bro.
Yeah.
Like, having kids is one thing, but trying to do it on your own, like that's another
trying to figure out everything by yourself.
Yeah, where you
that's
got to
rough.
be, you know, the positive, strong male role model.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But you're a female, and it's like, how do you really step into that and provide that? So like, yeah, single parents, warriors.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that took me years to kind of look at it like that too. Like just like you're saying, because once they took my badge and they took that identity from me, I
like,
was
who
like,
am I?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to figure out who I am all over again.
Literally what happened. And I'm like, you know, in my mid to late 20s, and I'm questioning, like, all these years in training go to nothing.
Yeah.
What is this now?
Yeah.
You know, and until years later, until my character was able to finally catch up to where God's calling me to be, I could see, like, okay, now I see God allowed me to experience these things so I can teach, so I can give back, so I can help other men do this. Because if I didn't experience it, how could I teach it?
Man.
So if I never went through that dark, that depression, that anxiety, that loss of identity, that pain, that struggle, if I had never touched that darkness, how could I help other people who are in there or have touched that or is in that right now?
Exactly.
With real, genuine, I've been there, bro. Like, I know what you're feeling. I get you.
Yeah.
You don't go to school and get a degree for that. You just school of hard knocks, homie.
Exactly.
You know, you just experience it, and then that's where the real, genuine.
Exactly.
Can I get a bachelor's in wisdom and experience, please?
Call me doctor.
Nah, man. You know, but it's always super interesting to me, right? Because in the Bible, and this is why I really wanted to talk about Saul, man, because